Today I'm going to be talking about compost. Now, I've mentioned in an earlier video that I'm going to switch over to a no-till, no-dig garden. When you do this, you've got to have compost. Now, I have my trailer loaded up because I don't have a compost pile started yet, because everything has been tilled before, so all my green leafy stuff has always been tilled back into the garden soil. So now we're going to show another option of getting started.
How do I stop?
Do what? Hit stop, the square one. And we're here at the compost yard, and we're getting a little compost. This is one way that you can do it. Okay, I made it back home with my little load of compost. As you can see, now I got my little utility trailer. Let's go out there a little bit. Now that's 4 yards of compost on there, which pretty much 16-foot utility trailer with the sideboards. It almost, you spread it out, it would level up the sides of it. But this is now this isn't as good as if you make your own and you have worm castings and stuff like that, but it is a good start. I actually put a thermometer in because it was feeling a little warm. It's only about 70 degrees today, but you can see the compost is still working some. It's some really good material. Now you could buy this, you could buy compost at Walmart or somewhere. I think it's like a little over $4 for a couple of square yards. But when you buy it at a place that makes compost, and this is one locally where people bring their yard waste, and tree cutters bring their trees and stumps, and they grind a bunch of that stuff up, and then they compost it. And they've got 3 different grades. This is their top one to amend the soil. And being that, like I said in earlier videos, that I'm going to start the no dig or no till, whichever way you want to call it, this will be great. But the only problem is, you know, there's 4 yards of compost that I got to unload. And in this stuff, occasionally you'll find little bits that were in there that didn't compost, which is some minor stuff. I know I've seen a little piece of glass in there, but all in all, for $20 a yard, and so that, you know, at $20 a yard, you've got 9 cubic feet, and you've got some really good compost. So if you're going to make a raised bed, I think this would be a good option. If you're going to do like me, you're going to switch to no dig. There's too much information out there that really it really makes you think about the way you're gardening. Charles Downing, you know, he's one of the ones that, I think, the original ones that started pushing that, and he's done his trials and stuff. Now this here is where I got some of my compost that I'm composting. Now it's a long ways. You can see that there's a lot of other stuff, but I'm going to put up a temporary bed. I'm going to try to measure it off to maybe I can leave this as my bed. Once I get finished, I'm going to come in and I'm going to pull some beds. That'll be the last time I dig it, is whenever I pull my beds when my crops come up. In fact, I'll start over here on the potato side. and this will be some of my first ones. I'll leave a little barrier on the side so I can possibly do a little tilling for weeds if I can't keep them down with mulching, which it shouldn't be a problem. But what I'm going to do is, and this is still fairly soft. It's not compact because this was I tilled in some more organic matter because I have, you might say, soil, and this has been amended with plants from here and stuff. But what this is, it's I would say a sandy loam. It has very little organic material in it. In fact, I can show where, and I might do that in this video, but where I've dug out a few stumps here recently, and you could actually see the depth of the sand, and it varies. If there's any clay, it's because I hauled in some iron ore clay to build up for a solid road, because sand driving on it over a period of time, and especially if it's a slope, it wants to wash away. So that's going to be the only one. Now on this new part over here, I did notice that the clay was shallower towards the bottom end, and that could be good for certain crops, and it for sure it's going to hold the water a little bit higher. But clay's not a bad thing. It is if you have a whole lot of it and nothing else, and you can amend it just like this. You can till in some organic matter, just keep putting it on top and doing a no dig. But clay is really rich in nutrients and the real fine particles, but you have to have a healthy soil, and the clay just doesn't support it because it doesn't have the organic matter. So you're not going to have the bacteria and stuff in there like you would in the soil that's got more organic material. But anyway, I'm excited, as a lot of you gardeners would be if you had that much compost brought in. And I could have had some compost delivered, but at the cost, if I got a 12-yard dump truck, it's going to cost me $200. And later on, that might be an option, but right now, it's easiest for me to just put my little sideboards on the trailer, throw a tarp down, and get after it. But anyway, I'll keep you updated how this is going, how this changeover is going. And if you want to see my videos as soon as they come out, well, subscribe, hit the bell so you'll be notified, and hit the like button if you like it, and go ahead and share it if you think that it might help somebody else out. But realize this is an option for I see a lot of them, and I follow some groups. I watch quite a bit of YouTube with some of the gardeners, and the common thing I hear is, how can I fill my raised beds inexpensively? Well, that is $80, but imagine how much how much of a bed you could fill with this, how big of a bed. And if you have like wood chips and stuff like that, like my compost pile that's been composting a few years and got a ways to go, if you have that kind of material that you can put into the bottom and then put some topsoil on top of it, you should end up with a great place to grow plants. Okay, I got my bed prepared. I've taken and put about 2 to 3 inches of compost on this bed to start it out. And I've watered it in good. Now what I'll do is I'll let it set just a little bit so that water can come soak in. And then I'll see how moist it is. And then as it gets late this evening, I might stick some of my plants in. It might be tomorrow. I need to test them and make sure they're going to handle the sun. So they should be fine. But there's no reason to take a risk. Yeah, I was talking about the poor quality of the soil. This is what I have. This is what I started out with. It's basically just a sand. I mean, it's in East Texas we call it sugar sand, but there's very little organic matter in here, and I grow pretty good vegetables. But what I'm wanting to do with this whole project, and some of the rest of you might have the same idea, is want to take and start feeding your soil so your soil feeds your plants, instead of putting fertilizer out and you know, and you're not really doing anything. You're not feeding the bacteria and the fungi that's in the soil, so you end up with plants, but it's a whole lot harder to grow them. It takes more water, it takes more fertilizer. You can imagine with the soil I have, with that sand, everything leaches out. So unless you build a good topsoil and you have the aerobic bacteria and stuff working there to break it down to where it's easy for the plants to get to it, then you're really not getting anywhere. And that's what I saw. I mean, you have more erosion. You can see on my garden after it's had a rain, you can see that it's that the soil has eroded some. And what you do when you start putting these compost and mulches on that soil, it keeps that from happening. It holds it in place. It lets the water go in, but it doesn't wash off your topsoil. So like I say, I've been gardening for over 30 years, and I've always grown a lot of vegetables, but I think it's time for a change, and we'll see how this goes.